I'm Beverly. I'm 30 years old, and I've always been the responsible one. I've just received my inheritance from my late grandmother. It's not a lottery win, it's a nest egg I've been planning for, the down payment for my first home, my future. Then, the call. My parents summon me to their house. The air in their living room is heavy, suffocating. My mother won't look me in the eye. Finally, she drops the bomb. My older brother, Chad, has a massive gambling debt. My stomach drops. But before I can even process it, my father looks at me. He doesn't ask. He demands. You need to use your inheritance to pay it. His voice is flat, entitled. He says, "Family helps family." The words hit me like a slap. My blood runs cold. The room goes quiet, that pressurized silence right before a storm breaks. I stand up. No. The look on their faces isn't just surprise, it's outrage, as if I was the one who had just betrayed them. I knew right then, this was only the beginning. What do you do when your own family looks at your future and only sees an emergency fund for someone else's mistakes? To understand why I said no, you have to understand where that money came from. This wasn't some joint family savings account. This wasn't a bonus from my parents. This was my inheritance, and it was left to me, and me alone, for a very specific reason. My grandmother, my mother's mom, was not a woman who missed things. She was sharp, observant, and she saw the dysfunction in our family dynamic with perfect, painful clarity. The EPJ, the evidence, notes she disliked my brother, Chad. And it says she hated my father. Those are strong words, and she was a strong woman. She saw how they operated. She saw how Chad, the golden child, could drain every resource around him, and how my parents would light their own futures on fire to keep him warm. And she saw me, the responsible one, the one who just kept her head down, worked hard, and never asked for anything. I have this one crystal clear memory. It's from a few years ago, before she got sick. I was visiting her, sitting in her small, quiet living room. I can still smell the lavender polish she used on her wooden tables and feel the slightly scratchy, floral print fabric of her favorite armchair. That chair just enveloped you. She was quiet for a long time, just watching me. Then she reached out, put her hand on mine. Her skin was like paper, but her grip was firm. She looked me right in the eye. "Beverly," she said, and her voice had that steel in it. "I'm not going to be around forever, and I've made sure you are taken care of. You." She squeezed my hand. "It's for you, not for your father, and not for that brother of yours. Don't you ever let them touch it. Do you understand me?" I nodded, my throat tight. I understood. It was our secret. It was her final act of protection. When she passed, and the will was read, it was exactly as she'd said. The language was ironclad. My father's name was nowhere near it. Chad's name was nowhere near it. The will, that physical object, that stack of paper, was her last line of defense for me. It explicitly stated the funds were to be left separately to me. It was her legal, binding shield. So when that money finally cleared my bank account, I didn't feel rich. I felt seen. I felt validated. I cried, right there at my kitchen table, looking at the numbers on my laptop screen. It was grief, yes, but it was also relief. It was the first time in my life I felt like I had armor. This money wasn't a windfall, it was a mission. It was my one stated goal, the one I had told her about in that same living room. I want to use it for a down payment on a house, a home, a foundation, something solid, something safe, something that was mine. And that is what my parents, my own mother and father, demanded I hand over to fix my brother's latest catastrophe. They weren't just asking for my money. They were asking me to tear down my own armor, betray my grandmother's dying wish, and sacrifice my entire future. All for a man who had already burned his own to the ground. Let's talk about Chad. My brother is 32 years old, a fully grown adult male. But in our family, he is, and always has been, the golden child. He's the sun my parents orbit, and he's the black hole that consumes everything in his path. The official record, the evidence from the Post, calls it a long history of gambling. That is such a polite, clinical, sanitized way to describe it. It's not a history. It's a rampage. For as long as I can remember, my entire adult life, it's been one emergency after another. A bad tip, a misunderstanding with some very unsavory people, a catastrophic loss, a debt that had to be paid, right now, or else. This intervention they staged for me? This wasn't his first crisis. It wasn't even his fifth. My parents have repeatedly bailed him out. And I don't mean they gave him a stern lecture and co-signed a consolidation loan. I mean they swooped in, full-blown financial saviors, every single time. They actively shielded him from every consequence. Chad has never had to face a collections agency. He's never had to sell his car or his expensive electronics. He has never, not once, been allowed to hit the cold, hard rock bottom that might, just might, have been the only thing to wake him up. My parents absorbed it all. They took the hit, time and time again. And they paid for his addiction, his recklessness, by systematically dismantling their own future. They drained their own retirement savings to cover his tracks. Think about that for a second. The money they worked 40 years to save. The money that was supposed to be their security, their peace, their ability to rest in their old age. They took that nest egg, their life's work, and they set it on fire, again and again, just to keep Chad from feeling the slightest chill. It wasn't help, it was enablement. It was a flashing neon sign, visible only to him, that said, "Don't worry, your actions will never, ever have consequences. We will always be your safety net." I have this one searing memory burned into my mind. It was a few years ago. I'd just gotten home from my 9 to 5, tired, my shoulder aching from my work bag. I walked into my parents' kitchen, and the silence was just wrong. My mother was at the kitchen table, in the near dark. The only light was that awful, buzzing fluorescent strip above the sink. She was just sitting there, weeping, but it wasn't a loud, sad cry. It was the sound of complete and utter exhaustion, the cry of someone who had absolutely nothing left to give. On the table, under her hands, was a stack of envelopes, overdue notices, bright red ink, bills so terrifying they didn't even look real. My dad was in the corner, on the old wall-mounted phone. I remember how cold the linoleum tile felt through my socks as I just stood there, frozen. My dad wasn't yelling. It was so much worse. His voice was low, hollow, dead. Yes, I understand. I'm transferring it now. He was reading numbers from his checkbook. His shoulders slumped so low he looked 20 years older. He was liquidating his future, his security, their entire life's work, to patch yet another hole in the sinking ship that was my brother. I just stood there, invisible. They didn't even see me. I was the responsible one, the one who paid her bills, the one who was at work all day, and I was a ghost in their shared tragedy. And the worst part? The absolute most infuriating part of that memory? Chad wasn't there. He was never, ever there for the cleanup. He'd light the fire, and then he'd vanish, leaving my parents to choke on the smoke and stamp out the embers. He never had to see my mother cry like that. He never had to hear the defeat in my father's voice. They did that for him. They bankrupted their own future for him. So, really, why was I so shocked? Why did I ever think they wouldn't do the exact same thing to me? Their retirement fund is empty, their well is dry, and now, they've turned around, and they're looking at my inheritance. They're looking at my grandmother's gift. They're looking at my future. And they see nothing but a refill. While Chad was a raging forest fire, demanding every drop of water, every resource, every ounce of attention, I was quiet. I was the garden they never had to water. While he was blowing up his life, I was building mine, brick by brick. What does that even mean, to be the responsible one? It means I got a job, I worked, I got a promotion, I worked harder. It means I built a credit score. It means I created a budget, a real one, in a spreadsheet, with categories for groceries and gas, and, yes, a line item for savings, ASS, house fund. I've been putting money into that fund for 6 years, long before my grandmother's gift. It was slow, it was boring, it was steady. My successes were quiet. No one threw a party when I paid off my modest, used car. No one called to congratulate me when my credit score crossed 800. My parents just expected it. "Oh, that's great, Beverly." "Of course you did." My failures were my own, and I handled them. When my transmission blew, I didn't call my parents, weeping and demanding they fix it. I took a deep breath, looked at my emergency fund, which was separate from my house fund, because that's what responsible people do, and I paid the mechanic. I ate rice and beans for 2 months to build it back up. I never asked them for money. Not for rent, not for my student loans, not for a car, nothing. And I realize now, that wasn't a virtue. It was a tactical error. All my self-reliance did was teach them that I didn't need anything. It taught them that Beverly is fine. Beverly will handle it. Beverly is the self-cleaning oven, the low-maintenance plant, the one child who doesn't cost them anything. I was the responsible one. My brother was the problem. And now, I know what responsible really means. It means the one we can take for granted. It's the polite word for scapegoat. I'm not the one who caused the crisis, but I'm the one they expect to pay for it. The betrayal of it all is suffocating. It's not just that they asked, it's how they asked. The demand, the entitlement, the absolute, stunning lack of awareness that they were asking their 30-year-old daughter to incinerate her own future to protect their 2-year-old son. 32. He is 2 years older than I am. This whole dynamic is sick. It's broken. My parents are 60-something-year-old adults, treating their 2-year-old son like he's a teenager who crashed the family car. They are still trying to shield him from the consequences of his own actions. And me? Their 30-year-old daughter? They're not treating me like a child. They're not even treating me like a daughter. They're treating me like a bank. They've proven, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that they are willing to sacrifice their own retirement, their own security, their own future, all for him. So why in the world did I ever let myself believe they wouldn't sacrifice mine, too? That's what that intervention in their living room was. It wasn't a request for help. It was an exposure. It was the moment the lights flipped on, and I saw the entire, rotted-out wiring of my family. I'm not their daughter. I'm their plan B. I'm the backup fund they just discovered. And I am the one who just looked them in the eye and told them the account was closed. My no echoed in the silence of their living room. I left. I walked out, my keys shaking in my hand, and drove home in a fog. I got inside my apartment, locked the deadbolt, and leaned against the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had done it. I had finally, for the first time, refused to be the solution to their problem. I slept badly, half expecting a knock on my door in the middle of the night. The next morning, it began. The official start of the harassment campaign. My phone, usually quiet, became a ticking bomb. The first call was from my mother, Susan. It was exactly 9:01 a.m. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the decline button, but I answered. A lifetime of programming is hard to undo in one night. Beverly? Her voice was thick, clogged with performative tears. It wasn't the sound of grief, it was the sound of a tactic. Mom? I just can't believe you, she sobbed. After everything, how can you be so selfish? There it was, the word, selfish. It hung in the air, heavy and toxic. My entire life, I had been trained to fear that word. Selfish was the worst thing this daughter, could be. Selfish was saying no. Selfish was having needs of my own. Selfish was, apparently, keeping what was legally, ethically, and morally mine. My throat tightened. Mom, it's not selfish. It's my inheritance. Grandma gave it to me She cut me off with a sharp intake of breath, a sound designed to communicate a mortal wound. Your brother, he could lose everything. And you're talking about a house? She was weeping, but I felt nothing. The well of my sympathy, the one they had been drawing from my entire life, was dry. I'm not discussing this, Mom. I hung up, my hand was shaking. 2 minutes later, a text message, this time, from my father. My dad doesn't do emotional weeping. He does the cold, hard hammer of disappointment. His text was simple, a digital execution. We are deeply, deeply disappointed in you. We raised you to be better than this. You are being ungrateful. Ungrateful? The word flashed in my brain. My vision went a little red at the edges. Ungrateful? For what? For the inheritance they didn't give me? For For the sacrifices I made, the double shifts I worked, the quiet, responsible life I built by myself while they poured their life savings into the black hole of my brother? Ungrateful, for refusing to light myself on fire to keep them warm. Then came the chorus, the follow-up texts from both of them. The classic, guilt-tripping line, the one they had used my whole life. Family helps family. I stared at that phrase on my phone screen. Family helps family. It sounded so right, so wholesome. But it was a lie. In this family, that phrase was a one-way street. It was a code. It meant, Beverly helps Chad. It never meant family helps Beverly. I never asked them to, but I knew, with a sudden, chilling certainty, that if I had, the answer would have been, well, you're the responsible one, you'll figure it out. Family helps family was the slogan they used to justify the sacrifice. It was the weapon they used to make me feel guilty for having a boundary. I had to stop this. I couldn't let it go on. I sat down, my fingers cold, and I typed out a response. I sent it to both of them, in a group text. My first official boundary. My inheritance is not family money. It is legally mine, from Grandma's will. She left it to me, specifically. I am using it for my house, just like I told her I would. This is not up for discussion. I hit send. My heart was pounding. I thought, I hoped, that the logic of it, the legality of it, would be enough. That the mention of my grandmother's will would make them stop. How naive I was. The reply came back, almost instantly, from my mother. You are breaking this family apart. Your brother's blood will be on your hands. We are coming over. My blood ran cold. This wasn't about money. Not really. They weren't just trying to get the funds. They were trying to break my no. This was about obedience. This was about me refusing to stay in my designated box as the family ATM, the eternal backup plan. This was a demand for my complete and total submission, and they were just getting started. My parents' threat, we are coming over, hung in the air. I stared at my phone, my whole body vibrating with a new, cold kind of terror. They weren't just going to call. They were going to escalate. They were going to show up at my door, create a scene, try to bully me in person, probably in the hallway of my apartment building where my neighbors could hear. I was pacing, my mind racing, trying to figure out if I could leave, where I could go. And then, my phone rang again. I snatched it up, ready to yell, "Leave me alone!" But it wasn't my mother. It wasn't my father. It was Chad. My finger hovered over the screen. This was it. The man himself, the source of the storm. The 2-year-old child who had just set my entire world on fire. I braced myself. For what? For tears? For a desperate, groveling apology? For a man at the end of his rope, finally ready to admit he had a problem? I took a deep breath. And I answered. Hello? Silence for a beat. Then, his voice. Hey, Bev. My blood went from boiling to ice. His voice, it was casual. He sounded bored. He sounded like he was calling to ask what time the game was on. There was no shame in it, no panic, no humility. The evidence in the EPJ is clinical, not remorseful. The reality was so much worse. He was nonchalant. So, he sighed, as if he was the one being inconvenienced. You heard about the mess. The mess, Chad? My voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. Yeah, Mom and Dad are, They're freaking out, going way over the top. I couldn't speak. My hand gripped my phone, the cheap plastic case creaking under the pressure. My knuckles were white. This man, who had just blown a massive hole in his life, who had set my parents on me like attack dogs, was describing it as going over the top. What do you want, Chad? Hey, come on, he said, and I could hear the smirk in his voice. That lazy, golden child smirk that had always gotten him whatever he wanted. Don't be like that. Just, give them the money so they'll shut up. It's no big deal. No big deal, the words came out flat. Yeah, come on, Beverly. And then he said it. The line that shattered every last shred of family obligation, every last molecule of doubt, every last thin thread of connection I had to him. You don't even need the money. My hearing went static. A hot, prickling flush climbed the back of my neck, up my spine, and locked my jaw so tight my teeth ached. The phone felt slick and hot in my palm. The world narrowed to that single, echoing phrase. Don't need it? My future? My home? The dream I had been quietly, diligently building, piece by piece, for my entire adult life? Don't need it? The 6 years of scraping, of saving every extra dollar, the double shifts, the skipped vacations with friends, the endless nights eating pasta so I could move that extra $50 into my house fund, the budget spreadsheet I look at every single night before I go to sleep. Don't need it? The one gift I have ever received in my entire life that was just for me? The final, protective act of my grandmother? The one person who saw me? In that single, awful, clarifying second, he didn't just ask for my money. He erased me. He erased my work, my sacrifices, my dreams, my personhood. He dismissed my entire life as irrelevant, as nothing more than a speed bump on the way to his next fix. And the final, horrifying realization landed on me like a ton of bricks. It wasn't just Chad. It was all of them. My mother's selfish, my father's ungrateful, and now Chad's you don't even need it. They had already spent my money in their heads. It wasn't a request. It was a collection. In their diseased, broken family ledger, that inheritance was not Beverly's future. It was Chad's bailout fund. They saw it as their property, their resource to deploy. And I was just the difficult, selfish, ungrateful person holding the key. I said nothing. I just let the static fill the line. Bev? Hello? You there? I looked at the phone in my hand, at his name on the screen, and I hung up. The click of the end call button was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a door locking. It was the sound of a war beginning. And it was the sound of me, finally, choosing to save myself. I hung up on Chad. The click of the end call button was a gunshot in the silent room. I stood there, staring at my apartment wall, my entire body vibrating. But it wasn't fear anymore. It was rage. It was a pure, cold, clarifying rage that burned away the fog of guilt, the years of obligation, the lifetime of being the responsible one. You don't even need it. His voice, his lazy, entitled, dismissive voice was on a loop in my head. He hadn't just dismissed my dream of a house. He had dismissed me, my work, my sacrifices, my future, my entire life, all just an inconvenient speed bump on his way to his next handout. And my mother's selfish, my father's ungrateful. It was a chorus. A three-part harmony of complete and total disrespect. All three of them had looked at my grandmother's final, protective act of love, her one attempt to give me a safe landing in this world, and saw nothing but a piggy bank to smash open for the golden child. I knew, with a certainty that felt like ice in my veins, they would not stop. Their threat, "We are coming over." They would pound on my door. They would wail in the hallway. They would call my boss. They would find a way to humiliate me, to leverage me, to break me down until I just gave in to make it stop. They had already eaten their own retirement fund to feed his addiction. They had devoured their own future. Now, they were coming for mine. My grandmother knew. I could almost hear her voice, sharp and clear. Don't you ever let them touch it. This inheritance wasn't just a gift. It was a life raft. That will wasn't just a legal document. It was a warning. It was her, reaching across time, telling me, "They will come for this. Protect yourself." The rage didn't make me scream. It didn't make me cry. It made me calm. It made me focused. It made me move. I grabbed my keys and my laptop. My phone was blowing up on the counter, my mother, my father, back and forth. I ignored it. I walked out of my apartment, got in my car, and drove straight to my bank. The air conditioning in the lobby was freezing. It was quiet, just the soft whir of a counting machine and the polite tap-tap-tap of keyboards. I sat down with a personal banker, a woman with kind eyes. My voice was perfectly even. "I need to wire the entire balance of my savings account, please. All of it. Right now." She raised an eyebrow, but she didn't ask questions. I gave her the account and routing number I had opened on my laptop just 30 minutes before, a new, high-yield savings account at a completely different bank. A digital-only bank. a bank they had never heard of, a bank they could not walk into. I signed the authorization form. My hand was perfectly steady. The pen felt heavy and solid. The laminate of the counter was cool and smooth beneath my elbows. "The wire has been sent," she said. "It should be confirmed within the hour." I stood up. "Thank you." I walked out of that bank and into the bright sunlight. The money was gone. It was in the digital ether, moving to a fortress they could not breach. I had just detonated the bridge. I got in my car. I still wasn't done. I pulled over, took a deep breath, and Googled estate lawyers. I called the first one with 5 stars and paid for an emergency 30-minute consultation. I explained everything: the will, the separate inheritance, the demands, the calls, the threats. The lawyer's voice was a balm of pure, righteous anger. "Miss Beverly," he said, "let's be perfectly clear. That will is ironclad. That money is 100%, unequivocally yours. What your family is doing isn't just pressure. It's textbook financial abuse. You did the absolute right thing by moving the money. You have every right to protect your assets." Financial abuse. The word echoed in my head. All this time, they had made me feel selfish. He just told me I was being abused. I hung up, the last piece of my armor locking into place. I opened my phone. A wasteland of red notifications. 32 missed calls. Dozens of texts. I opened the family group chat. I typed one final message. "The inheritance money has been moved to a new, secure account. It will be used for my house, as Grandma intended. This discussion is over. Do not contact me about this again. Any further harassment will be forwarded to my lawyer." I hit send. I watched the delivered receipt appear. Then, I tapped my mother's name. Block. My father's name. Block. My brother, Chad. Block. I turned my phone off. The sudden, total, deafening silence was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. The silence that followed was total. I had turned my phone off. When I powered it back on a day later, my inbox was empty. The blocks were holding. The extinction burst I had braced for, the pounding on my apartment door, the calls from unknown numbers, the ambush at my office, it never came. Or if it did, I was finally, blissfully, insulated from it. That silence was the sound of a machine grinding to a halt. A machine that had been running for 32 years, fueled by my parents' enabling and, I now realized, my own quiet compliance. By removing myself as the emergency fuel source, the whole system had collapsed. I don't know what happened to Chad. I don't know if he faced his creditors, if he declared bankruptcy, or if he finally found some other rock to crawl under. And that's the part that brings me peace. I don't know. And I don't have to. For the first time in his adult life, my brother was left standing alone in the center of the wreckage he had created. My parents, who had so eagerly bankrupted their own future for him, were now powerless to force me to do the same. Their leverage was gone. Their guilt trips had bounced off my new armor. The bank was closed. That was the real karmic justice. Not a grand, theatrical explosion, just the simple, irreversible, and for them, terrifying consequence. A week later, I walked into an open house. It wasn't a palace. It was a small, 2-bedroom bungalow on a quiet street. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew. The walls were painted a soft, clean white. The air smelled like fresh paint and sawdust. It smelled like new. I walked into the kitchen. Sunlight was streaming through a big window over the sink, illuminating the little dust motes dancing in the air. I ran my hand over the cool, smooth countertop. I reached into my bag and pulled out the mortgage pre-approval letter. My name was at the top, and under the down payment section was the exact amount my grandmother had left me. I stood there, in that empty, sun-drenched room, and I took the first deep, clean breath I've taken in 30 years. It was quiet. It was safe. It was the sound of a foundation being laid. That night, back at my apartment, I was starting to pack. I came across an old, framed photo of my grandmother. She was smiling, that sharp, knowing look in her eyes. I wiped the dust off the glass. She was my ally. She was my found family. She knew. She had seen this all coming. She couldn't stop them from being who they were. She couldn't heal their broken dynamic. But she did the only thing she could. She gave me the tools to save myself. That will, that stack of papers, wasn't just money. It was her final word. It was her, reaching across time, and giving me a legal, binding, ironclad no. She gave me the armor. She gave me the shield. And I had finally found the courage to lift it. The next morning, I called the real estate agent. I put in an offer on that small, sunny bungalow. My future, built by my own work and protected by her love. A future I did need. My family called me selfish. They called me ungrateful. For my entire life, I was terrified of those words. But I've learned something. When a broken system demands your self-destruction to keep functioning, selfish is just another word for survivor. When they call you ungrateful for refusing to be exploited, it means you finally recognized your own worth. They were right about one thing. Family does help family. My grandmother helped me. But I've learned that I am family too. And it was finally my turn to help myself. Sometimes, you have to be your own rescuer. You have to be the one to say, no, lock the door, and walk away towards your own light. If you've ever had to fight to protect your own future, or if you've ever had to be your own hero, you are not alone. Subscribe for more stories about breaking free, setting boundaries, and building a life on your own terms.